Hello there, everyone. Okay, new season is upon us, and it's a bit of a beach party theme. Um, yeah, let's get into the cards. There's definitely some weird ones this season. Interesting text, though, as we've got a new version of Jeff. So, we have got Jeff the Baby Dolphin, 2 cost 2 power. The text is your cards reveal here with +1 power, movable once. So this is actually kind of cool. I like the idea that you play Jeff down on the board. Anything that you play in Jeff's lane is going to gain 1 power, but you can move Jeff to then do that again in another lane. So I think there is something pretty neat about him. I think it's nice that they've kept the flavour of the original Jeff in terms of the move aspect, but they've just given it a small tweak to basically say, yeah, there's something new about this. So I think it's quite good. I think it could boost certain archetypes that have maybe been lagging behind a little bit. Let's just go into what I've been thinking in terms of synergies counters. So, first things first, the most obvious one in my mind when I saw this card, Kitty Pride. Kitty always seems to come to mind with these kind of shells. I like the idea of just being able to go, right, Kitty 1, Jeff the Baby Dolphin 2, then you go Kitty again, and maybe an Angela Kitty. Point being, you just keep playing in the lane. You can put the Kitty in to keep the lane full, or you can put a move card in or something. I like the idea. I think there's some really fun things in that. Then next up, we've got Madam Web. Again, this is very it's like an adjacent angle to what I think a lot of people will be thinking, but I do like the idea that you've obviously got the movability once, but supposing you play Jeff the Baby Dolphin in the middle lane, and then you've got Madam Web in the left or right lane, you could then move Jeff to Madam Web's location, and then you could move Jeff to the third location. So there is a bit of viability there in terms of, all right, we can actually move Jeff around with Madam Web. I'm not entirely sure if it will be a good fit, but I like the idea of essentially acknowledging that Madam Web could at least allow Jeff to move around more. Another option could be Web Sling, the skill. It'd be 1 cost cheaper, no power, obviously, but if you wanted to just say, right, I kind of want to put some power over here, you could do something to that effect. Then the third card that comes to mind, Sebastian Shaw. Whenever I hear about abilities that are giving permanent power, Sebastian Shaw is always the first one that comes to mind. Now, there's going to be plenty of things that will fill that role. I mean, Mr. Sinister, Brood, Stick nowadays, Maverick, just so many things that will want to gain power. But Shaw for me is the one that always springs to mind as far as you can visually see him wanting it. In terms of he gains 1, then he +2, so it's +3. It's just such a great. If you talk about the actual VFX of the card, I love it. So yeah, I think that is a very obvious synergistic card. Now the counters. I feel like there's some interesting options here in terms of if you don't get the season pass and what you're trying to think about what to use against it. The first one that came to mind for myself was Mercury. I feel like we haven't seen a lot of Mercury in the meta recently. I mean, from being a 2/2, I believe she was, to now a 3/4, maybe that did impact her viability a little bit. I actually appreciate that because Mercury at one point was just so frustrating. Well, it wasn't even Mercury, it was Cannonball and Mercury. But yeah, it felt like it just lost a bit of fun when you were trying to play things that might move, and then it's like, oh no, Mercury's there, that stops that. So yeah, I can't help but look and think, okay, this is a good option if you want to go down that road. Now, after this, we've got a whole slew of a very specific type of card. We've got Red Guardian, we've got Cosmic Ghost Rider, and we've got Deafening Chord. Consider this like the broad archetype of cards that remove text. So, say you've got Jeff, front lane, he's going to be targetable by all 3 of those cards, assuming he's on his own, or assuming that it's on the front row in terms of Cosmic Ghost Rider. So, how I look at it, it's a way of quietening it quickly. If you're talking about Deafening Chord or if you're talking about Red Guardian, obviously, if you get into the point where you're Cosmic Ghost Riding it, it's probably not going to be to great effect because it's going to have procced a couple of times. But still, they are the group of cards I would be sort of listing as a counter in terms of if you want to rather stop it from moving, but just stop it doing its thing. You've got those options. And then the final card. Well, we've had something that stops the move. We've had something that just stops it altogether. So the only other thing we can try and stop is the power gain. And that is Shadow King. And yeah, if I'm going to be frank, probably you could also include Shang-Chi here potentially, depending on if you think to yourself any of these buffs that Jeff is giving out will be taking a card over 10. But more than likely, it's not going to go that high. We'll have to see how the card performs, obviously. But right now, I'm thinking Shadow King's probably the better card to do a job. So that is what Jeff has got to offer. Let's show what's coming out in the series. Let me get this right. The Series 5 pack. Right, we've got this dude who, based on this card art, is very rectangular, but I believe Monstro is just being poorly framed here. Monstro is an 8/8. Very interesting to have an 8 cost card released. And the text is, this card's cost is reduced by the cost of your deck's top card. Now, I think this is a very interesting deck building conundrum. What I'm going to suggest later in the video, I am not convinced will be suitable, but I do think it's an interesting card. I imagine someone will cook something really fun with it. Now, for me, the plus side, if you can include enough high cost cards in your deck, then in theory, Monstro could be very cheap. So if we're talking a 1/2, a 1/8, a 2/8, fantastic. The downside there is you'd have to have a 7 cost card or a 6 cost card being on top of the deck for Monstro to reduce by. Once you get to 5 costs, 4 costs, the value drops because a 3/8, it's not bad. I mean, I say it's not bad. Gladiator and Starbrand are the only cards naturally at that power. If you go for a 4/8, there are a few cards at that stat line. I still think 4/8 is okay, but I feel like it would be a bit awkward in terms of, I know for myself, if I'm playing a 4/8, I want an effect with it. So I would be a little bit put off by playing that down. And then as soon as you've got a 5/8, a 6/8, you're getting poor value. So it's definitely a card that you can see the scale in terms of it'll go, well, it'll probably go down more like, you'll start off really good with if it hits high, but if it goes low, it'll feel really bad. Now, the text does seem to imply it's going to be continuous, so it's every turn. So say your top card of your deck was, I don't know, America Chavez, and it was a 7 cost, then you could hold it, wait for the next turn. Say your next turn you had Scar in your deck, it would go down to 1 cost. So I do think that is a benefit to it. It is quite flexible, but I think as well you've got to be able to find a benefit from it. So in my mind, I'm thinking not only do you want to try and reduce the card's cost, but if you can't reduce it well, can you buff it? So that's where my brain has gone when it comes to deck construction. Anyway, let's show you counters and synergies again. There aren't that many counters I've found, but let's go to the synergies first. Oh, I went a bit fast there, but Chamber and Dragonlord, let's just show them together. So Chamber's text recently got adjusted, I believe. I might be mistaken, it might have always been what it is, but either way, he will be able to target Monstro in terms of gaining power. So for me, I thought, okay, that should be a neat synergy. We got Dragonlord. I thought, all right, what if you don't want to play it? You don't want to actually play an 8 cost card, just Dragonlord, maybe it'll pull it. So it's random, obviously, but if you're just trying to pull your hand, if you just try and get rid of all your cards from your hand in your deck, Dragonlord's an option. And then the final card. Now, this one was an odd one, but it's more that Monstro synergizes with Shadowlands Daredevil. And my thought process is, Shadowlands Daredevil gains power every time it draws a 6 power or higher card. Monstro is 8 power flat. So straight away, you're going to be buffing Shadowlands Daredevil. Now, in those decks, traditionally you want to have cards that are 6 or more power. So whilst you will have some cheap ones like the demons, you can try and curve higher and go for 4 cost, 5 cost, 6 cost cards, in which case Shadowlands Daredevil will be buffed and Monstro will be reduced. Do I think that this will be played? No. I think there are too many people who just look at Shadowlands Daredevil and won't go for a low curve, a whole bunch of 1s, 2s, 3s, maybe a 4, but that's about it. But just in terms of maybe trying to construct something that's a little bit out there, I thought I'm going to throw that one in. Now the counters, again, I couldn't think of too many, but there was one that was clear and obvious. Mobius and Mobius. This guy's on the board. You can forget about playing Monstro, at least from you playing it onto the board yourself. I mean, maybe a limbo game with a bonus energy somehow, like a Tinkerer's Workshop effect. Other than that, I don't think you'd be playing playing Monstro with Mobius. Now, the other card that came to mind in terms of disruption, Stardust, and it's simply because of this angle with Dragonlord. If you were going to try Dragonlord, if you were going to try Jubilee, I mean, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure why you'd want to put Monstro in a Jubilee deck, I'd say. But just supposing, maybe it's Halla or something, you just wanted a different 8 cost. Again, I'm not too sure why, because Death is better. Then, that would be a thing. So, yeah, I figured Star deserves a mention, but I figured the biggest counter here is Mobius. All right, last up, we have got Venus, who, a bit like Lady Bullseye, I think it was in my last video, is missing part of her legs. Again, I recognise this is how the card art works, but it is funny when you see it. So, Venus is a 3-cost, 3-power card with the text. When your card in play... Sorry, I think I might have typed that wrong. When your cards in play are empowered, give those cards an additional +1 power. Now, this isn't an ongoing effect, it's just a standard text. So I actually think this is quite good. Again, it would require a very specific kind of card to silence it. So I actually think there's some potential value here. Now, for the record, because Empowered has literally just come into the game this past week, Empowered is essentially when any card gains permanent power. So again, we're looking at the likes of Sebastian Shaw. Now, I actually think that this has got a lot of potential because there are a lot of ways to give or empower other cards, if you like. I mean, I'm thinking of Marvel Boy. You put 1 cost cards on the board, you are going to be empowering them. That is my understanding of this anyway. So Venus can essentially double the buffs of activators like Marvel Boy. So yeah, I really think this is good, especially when you've got Jeff coming out as the Season Pass card. Venus is the super premium Season Pass card. I don't know what they call it. But yeah, I think the two could work really well together. I think it's a very nice pairing. I don't know exactly how strong they're going to be as a duo, but I do think you're going to want them as a duo. I mean, we've had seasons where maybe you could get the Season Pass but skip the premium, just in the sense that the premium was maybe, the Whereas I think Venus will go really well with Jeff. So from a purchaser point of view, if you're going to spend the £9, £10, dollars, whatever your currency might be, it's definitely worth getting the extra 10 for the super premium, I would argue, this time. Now, let's go into the synergies and counters again. Oh, I did forget to animate that one. So, yeah, Red Guardian's a counter. What a surprise. But yeah, let's go into the actual other cards. So we've got Jack Flag. I wanted to talk about something that was a beneficiary of empowerment in a different way. Because obviously we've talked about Sebastian Shaw and the idea of how you can visualize his power gain. But I think Jack Flag's quite interesting. Very underplayed as well right now. But again, I like the concept. The idea you buff it is the lane and he just buffs it up some more. And then you got Venus. She'll add more to it. I think that could be a really nasty combo, but not in a nasty way, if that makes sense. Your opponents will be looking and going, I need to counter this hard or I'm in trouble. So after that, Gwenpool. Again, Gwenpool's just going to buff cards in your hand. For me, it's a great enabler for something like Venus, because say you've buffed, I don't know, let's go for a normal Jeff, the Jeff 2-4 we got in the game. You buff that Jeff up, play it on the board. Venus is going to give it an extra power of, to land on the board with. For me, you can't complain at that. Then we got Surge. I actually think this one works really well because you Surge turn 2, then you can Venus turn 3. If you haven't already, you could then Jeff the Baby Dolphin, turn 4 with another 2, maybe a 3 if you got Jeff from the Surge. So I do think there could be a nice bit of curves there, if I'm going to be honest. Now, the other 2 counter cards, well, I'd say 2, I think we might have listed 3 here. So we got Shadow King again. Naturally, anything that's... It's such a weird way of phrasing it, permanently gain power. It's where I do actually like the idea of empowerment. Because, yes, they are gaining power that isn't in fluctuation like an ongoing effect, but it can be removed via a Shadow King, so it feels very, very awkward to phrase it that way. So yeah, Shadow King is one. The other one that I got in mind, which I didn't exactly animate well, was Deafening Chord again. 3-cost card Venus, so quite susceptible to just a little... And then finally, Cosmic Ghost Rider again. Again, it's not an ongoing effect, so you Cosmic Ghost Rider the Venus, it's not going to remove all the power Venus has been giving out, but it will have it will stop any final turn plans. So it isn't the worst option, but yeah, it's not going to be a first either. So let's get into some deck kooks. First of all, I've got one that's going to involve both Jeff the Baby Dolphin and Venus. We're calling it Empowering. So I want to go for a Kitty Pryde shell. I've said this for so long of late that I just want to get into this way of playing Angela again. And I was even going for a higher curve originally, but I thought, no, let's stop at 4. Something tells me I could even try and slot Silver Surfer in here. But I actually want to see if this shell could work without, like, going full Surfer. Because, what is it, 5 cards aren't Surfer cards. So why don't we just lean into the idea that we're trying to buff anything? So, Kitty's just great for playing something when you've got a bit of extra energy. Jeff, Angela, they're great turn 2. Then Jack Flag Venus, they're going to be buffing either the lane or everything that gains power. Drax and Viv Vision are going to be... Well, Drax is going to be gaining power if someone plays something bigger than him. Viv is going to hopefully buff a hand. Hope is just to get a bit of extra energy. Copycat I've included just for a bit of tech. I thought, I say tech, we don't know what we're going to get from Copycat, obviously. But just supposing your opponent's got something that's quite handy, Copycat can be quite handy. If it copies an Apocalypse, it's useless. But if it's just like, oh yeah, I've got a 3/5 Iron Man, that is great. So for that reason, I feel like Copycat deserves a role in this deck. Elsa Bloodstone, I feel like, again, a bit like Angela, she's really fallen from the pedestal she once was. I don't even know if she could get back there because I can't even remember what her exact ability was on release. That's a weird thing. I don't know if she was 3-cost. I think she was, but maybe she didn't have the same power she has now? Or same power as in like, the power she puts out? Either way, she feels like she's fallen from then, but let's try her out. Let's see if maybe she's not as bad as we've been feeling. Then we've got Gwenpool and Galacta. Obviously, hand and board buffs just feels great with this whole package of let's buff things. So, I like the idea. Not 100% sure how it will play out because we haven't got something that's like a definitive payout. Like, say, a Brood, a Sinister, just something that really wants to be buffed. But it has got a few cards that will probably just benefit from being buffed anyway. So we can see how this one plays out. Alright, next up, I've gone for a Pixie shell when it comes to Monstro. Now, I didn't list Pixie as a synergy, just for the simple fact I wasn't entirely sure if this would be a good idea anyway. But what we're doing here, we've gone for a load of random cost, should we say. We've got 0, 1, 2, all the way up to 8. And it's the idea, let's just mix it all up. We can Pixie it, we can Mobius it, so we only get the good stuff. Maybe we could be playing a 1/8, a 2/8, and Monstro just won't have his cost increased. That could be kind of cool. We got Hydro Man if things go wrong. Maybe we could just reduce the cost of something to 1. Dragon Lord obviously to pull something from hand. Jubilee to something from deck. Again, there's some interesting options. I haven't seen much of Fin Fang Foom since he had a nerf, so I figure maybe he's playable in the sense of not being too overpowering. Again, you want to win, but there's always that line of let's not go complete dirtbag. So hopefully Finn's in that kind of line right now. And also, I feel like Red Hulk's always just pretty solid in a shell like this, and that he's kind of good. You know, if you could get his cost reduced, he's very good. You know what I mean? You know, if you got like say 310 Red Hulk, it's like ooh. So yeah, for that reason, I'm like, okay, we want this. So I'm curious how this one plays. We will show you the final deck though, because that one is making me think: do we do this in a video or not? I've just realised I've had the deck names covered up for the first two. This one is called a dolphin, a monster, and a planet. Yeah, so it's a bit of an odd one. We've got essentially a load of combinations of things that we've been using so far, largely buffing stuff. So Chavez, capable of buffing top card of the deck. We've got Nico Manuru, who can buff a card in hand, buff a self. Just great ways of trying to actually impact the board, but also you could potentially use the destroy ability or the move ability if you've got a funny location. So there are a few things that Nico's pretty handy for besides the obvious. We mentioned Surge earlier, just great if you want to go a Surge Venus line. Jeff, obviously, Venus, obviously, they are obviously going to be a part of a shell like this. Fastos, I was thinking, all right, we've got Monstro in this deck, so what could we do to have a backup plan in case things go wrong? And I thought, what about Fastos in terms of we could try and reduce Monstro's cost? But also, by doing it, maybe the negative is it would impact the cost of cards that he could be looking at. So it is a bit of an awkward one, but maybe it could help out if he's not in hand, but he's in deck. Shaw, I've already stated it. Jeff and Shaw should get along like a house on fire. Wong, I like the idea that maybe if we pull Fastos late, Monstro's in deck, we could go Wong, Fastos, and Surge. That would be quite interesting. If not, we could go Wong, Gwenpool, just buff our hand. Galacto is another option, obviously, in terms of, all right, maybe we can just give something power. Again, I kind of like that. Gilgamesh. I was trying to think of a card that I would... I was trying to fill the curve a little bit, and I thought, okay, well, let's assume worst case scenario, Monstro is a 6/8. Then let's go for a 5. And yeah, I thought, why not Gilgamesh? We're buffing things, so it's not like we're going for ongoing power. So Gilgamesh should buff himself up just by playing that. So I am tempted to give this one a go as well. I think the reality is, out of the two decks, we've got this one, we've got the Monstrous Pixie, and the first one's called Empowering. I think the likelihood for the videos is that I will end up doing something like this, if not this, and probably this. But I will try and give this one a go as well on my own, if not in a video, because I kind of like the idea of what this does, but maybe it needs a tweak. Yeah, it's a trouble sometimes. I feel like I'm concocting these decks very fast. So when I actually get a chance to actually sit with them in the game, and I don't know if you guys are like this as well, I feel like I can see the cards just a little bit better. And suddenly be like, oh, hang on, this card's there, isn't it? I could try this. So yeah, I feel like this is a good starting point, shall we say. I think all of these are good starting points if you're just looking for an idea for these cards. But I can imagine there are going to be some fun cooks out there, especially when it comes to the Jeff Venus combo. But that is it, everyone. The beach party season is going to be kicking off on later today, to be honest. So yeah, I think it could be an interesting one. We've obviously seen 3 cards here, but there's going to be loads more during the season, and I think a lot of them have got some good abilities. So yeah, I think this is a good start to the season, but let me know what you're thinking in the comments, folks. Are you tempted to pick up Jeff and Venus, or are you going to hold back and see how the stats pan out? I mean, honestly, that's probably the safest bet anyway, but I'm going to say, personally, I think they look good. As far as Monstro, I've always said I'm not a snap and pass guy, and I do understand why people always have that question: should I get the card? Me personally, I always think try to get the cards so that you can be collection complete, and then you don't have to choose between cards. But if you are in a position where you feel you do have to choose, I honestly would skip. Monstro, he's an interesting conundrum, but he is not worth spending. Well, I wouldn't say he's worth spending the tokens to open a seasonal pack, let alone the actual just grab the card option. So, yeah, for me personally, I wouldn't get him, but I'm quite comfortable getting him, so I will be at least able to showcase it for you. All right, folks. Thank you for watching the video. If you haven't already, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. And until tomorrow, when we show a bit of Jeff and Venus, I will see you later, folks. Have a good rest of your day. Goodbye for now.